Hello and welcome to Dialogue. I'm Yang Rui. Following his visits to Serbia and Poland on his three-nation trip to Central and Eastern Europe, President Xi is now in Tashkent on the third leg of his tour to Uzbekistan. After his official state visit, where he has been welcomed by President Islam Karimov, he will stay in the Uzbek capital to attend the 16th Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. So how deep are relations between China and Uzbekistan? And how critical is this relationship to the future fortunes of China's Belt and Road Initiative? To discuss the issues, I'm happy to be joined here by Professor Wang Yiwei, Director of the Center for European Studies at Renmin University, and Rick Dunham, a visiting scholar at Tsinghua University. But first, let's look at this background report.
The Republic of Uzbekistan is a landlocked country in Central Asia. Its GDP expanded 8% in 2015 despite continued weakness in the global economy. Manufacturing has grown in recent years and now accounts for approximately 1/4 of its GDP. The economy relies mainly on commodity production, including cotton, gold, uranium and natural gas. Since the establishment of a strategic partnership in 2012, both China and Uzbekistan have enjoyed strengthened bilateral ties.
It's of great significance. We are looking forward that during the visit, President Xi and President Karimov will jointly announce to lift bilateral ties to a new level, providing new momentum, new opportunities, and new fields of cooperation. During the SCO summit, memorandums on India and Pakistan will be signed. This signals that the SCO is starting to take new members in gradually, based on a consensus. This is a sign that the organization is gaining more influence and an entry into a new development stage.
China and Uzbekistan have enjoyed fast development in their economic relationship. Bilateral trade between the two hit $3.5 billion in 2015. China's exports to Uzbekistan totaled $2.23 billion, while imports stood at $1.27 billion. China is Uzbekistan's biggest source of direct investment. According to the Chinese Ministry of Commerce, China's direct investment to Uzbekistan reached $510 million by April 2016. Under the Belt and Road Initiative, China and Uzbekistan have carried out comprehensive cooperation in energy, finance, transportation, agriculture and telecommunications.
Welcome to Dialogue, gentlemen. We don't know yet the agenda of the 16th Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Tashkent, capital city of Uzbekistan. But blessed by rich resources and biggest population in Central Asia, do you think this is the major driving force for China to align the Belt and Road Initiative with the development of Uzbekistan?
Well, traditionally, Uzbekistan is a very famous Silk Road country with lots of heritage. Even today, the UNESCO city, like Takashima city, they're very famous. It's a passage to access to Persia and then to the Gulf and then to the Middle East, to Europe. Today, Uzbekistan is the member of the SCO. And when the SCO, this summit is after 15 years past, they want to talk about the more, not only on security cooperation, but also economic. So first service for the mutual connectivities, and even think about the enlargement to include Pakistan and India. So this, I think, is historic development of the SCO. So the Uzbekistan, I think, as the host, play a very important role in bringing this gap.
Rick, some of the Western media describe our relationship with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization as a semi-NATO. It's compared to a military bloc. And so a lot of the media reports from the West focus on the geopolitical implications of SCO. However, upon its founding, leadership of those nations of SCO emphasized overwhelmingly the importance of fighting three evil forces. Do you think this will continue to be the major issues on the agenda, or do you think, the Belt and Road Initiative will instead add to the sustainability and the resilience?
Well, I think the bloc is not a military bloc, obviously. If you're even talking about having Pakistan and India in it, you know it can't be military because they're arch enemies militarily. But I think that it's going to be both a combination of security in a world of terrorism, but economic development. Many of the countries in Central Asia are suffering because the Russian economy is in such terrible condition and their infrastructures are weak, and China has things that they need, which could help build the countries, help their economies. So I think there is a natural combination, both in terms of economic necessity and the geopolitical security in an age of terrorism.
Do you think the leadership of the Central Asia and Central and Eastern Europe share exactly the same vision with President Xi Jinping about the Belt and Road Initiative?
I don't think it's exactly the same vision, but I think that they have a lot of shared views. I mean, the Belt and Road Initiative is designed to help China shift the economy and do what President Xi Jinping calls win-win economics. It helps China because it is the source of economic development and jobs for China and trade, but it also helps these countries in that it will help build infrastructure in particular, and it will help them with their future being able to have economic development with adjacent countries, and even with the belt into Europe, it will allow them a market, an entree into the huge European market that is really lacking from Central Asia now.
And what do you think of the economic and mutual complementarity between member states of the SCO and China in this area? Because China has been talking about, for example, the capacity that we need to export following the release of the policy about the supply side structural reform. And do you think China skills, technology, and other resources about the infrastructure construction, we are warmly welcome, therefore?
Well, it's not just the export over capacity. We say it's international capacity cooperation. Why? Because today it's not just made in China, constructed by China. So many infrastructure building, which needs more materials. We can help those countries. You know, Central Asia probably the most welcome Belt and Road Initiative. Why? Most of them, they are landlocked country. For instance, Uzbekistan is the doubly lot-length country, only 2 in the world, which means the Belt and Road help them to access to the sea, because of today's globalization, 90% of the trade is from the sea. So when they're far away from the sea, that means marginalized by the globalization. We're very welcome in those countries. That will help them to access to the international global market. At the same time, they need infrastructure building to connect each other, because large space, but without enough people. I just come back from Kazakhstan, you know, just 17 million people. It's a number 9 large country in the world. So transportation, infrastructure building is very important for them to bridge the gaps and then help them to join the international cooperation.
But Rick, all of the Central Asian nations used to be the republics of the Soviet Empire during the Cold War. And President Putin put forward his vision about having a Euro-Asian economic union. Does that have any possible direct clash with Xi Jinping's version of the Belt and Road Initiative?
The simple answer is yes. There is potential clash there, but I think that China is trying to avert a clash directly. But obviously for these countries, Russia had been their leading trading partner. Uzbekistan is a good example. China has overtaken Russia as a trading partner. There's more potential growth because of the Russian economy going in reverse, not just slowing down, but going in reverse. And so these countries will be tied to China, will want to be tied to China. The question is, can Russia and China coexist in that situation, or will President Putin want to reestablish what was the Soviet Empire and his sphere of influence?
But Dr. Wang, following the takeover of Crimea, Moscow was facing economic sanctions and embargo imposed by the NATO and the United States above all. Also, given the low level of oil prices, do you think Moscow is coming under huge pressure to go east, seeking help from China in areas of energy collaboration, for example, and therefore the possibility of having any clashes between the Eurasian Economic Union and the Belt and Road Initiative has therefore been minimized?
Well, it's not a zero-sum game. We said this is 21st century. We are not repeating the same game or strategy in the 19th century, even before. So when we talk about the Belt and Road, one of the keywords is the synergy of the strategy. That means Belt and Road, the different countries, there are different development strategies, but put together, I think synergies of them, I think make some 1 + 1 can reach even more 3, that kind of effect. So the Eurasian Economic Union, which is led by Russia, definitely want to have a synergy of the strategy with the Belt and Road. This we signed the MOU when President Xi visited Moscow. So in this regard, I think it can help Russia and other Central Asian countries to bridge the gaps, because it's a large territory. The east and the west is quite, huge, very huge. So I think that's the reason, not just sanctioned by the West, it have to go to the east, but the domestically demand really to join Belt and Road Initiative.
Well, so much for our discussion about the SCO, which will, of course, enlarge its size by possibly including Pakistan and India in the next round of enlargement. Let's go back to what happened at the beginning of his 3-nation tour of Central Eastern Europe as well as Central Asia. Now, President Xi Jinping chose Serbia as the very first leg of his important trip this time around. And above all, he chose the ruins of the Chinese embassy to pay his tribute to 3 Chinese martyrs who were killed by the NATO in a bombing. When did that take place? In
1999.
1999. Well, that was, of course, a nightmare and a big shock for the Chinese people who became so angry. Now, what did that mean for you when you saw President Xi laying the wreath there to pay tribute?
Well, I think it sent the signals that China and Serbia have very good, traditionally, good relations. They work together. The fight against the fascism during the Second World War, during the Soviet Union's period, they also jointly fight against the Soviet Union's imperialists. That's we respect each other. The many movies still people remembered in China, and vice versa. This signal also send that Chinese, fight against for the national interests. Now more and more Chinese go overseas. So the Chinese government should protect their lives and then their interests. We very respect those who sacrifice for the friendship and the Chinese interests.
Rick, are you aware that the bombing of the Chinese embassy might serve as a wake-up call for the Chinese military to our own, for example, missile projection capability? Because it was exactly because of the precise, the precision missiles that killed 3 Chinese journalists.
Right.
So, what do you think of the impact?
Well, it's something that had much greater impact in China than it did on NATO at the time, and the story was very much underplayed in the West at the time that it happened. But I think the symbolism of this trip was very important, both in Belgrade and in Warsaw. But I mean, as far as Serbia is concerned, there was a message sent to NATO, and it was that China will be there. China is not going to be locked out just because there is a NATO. And even though Milosevic was and the government of Yugoslavia at that time was guilty of war crimes, it still was a terrible situation with the bombing of the embassy there.
Thank you very much. You're watching Dialogue with Dr. Wang Yiwei from Renmin University and Rick Dunham, visiting scholar from Tsinghua. We'll be back in a short while. Stay with us. Welcome back, gentlemen. Central authorities in Belgrade of what was called the Yugoslavian Federation decided to turn to collective leadership After Generalissimo Tito died, by the way, he was a very strong. He exercised a very strong leadership during the Cold War and became a close friend of China after relationship between Moscow and Beijing was severed during the Cultural Revolution. But that had somehow allegedly led to the disintegration of the Yugoslavian Federation. Look at the Bosnian War and the ethnic cleansing, so on and so forth, that led to the arrest of Slobodan Milosevic, the former leader of Serbia. What do you think of the lessons that China should draw? Do you think this will be one of the major talking points in a private conversation between President Xi Jinping and his Serbian counterpart?
Maybe they of course maybe mention about the history, so we can learn some lessons from this tragedy. Firstly, when the West, in the name of NATO, bomb your country, in the name find some excuse, like in Iraq, it says WMD, this is the genocide. Actually, it's not so much. Even the need excuse to do something. People think about the Serbia during that time is the only maybe blank for NATO expansion. So they want to remove this regime and then the use of force unilaterally, not authoritated by the United Nations. So it's definitely violated the international rules and law. Secondly, we need a strong military and national defense capacity. Otherwise, you cannot safeguard your security. And also, we should work together to share technology, military information. And then I think that's maybe some second center.
Slovenia was the first republic of the Yugoslavian Federation to become independent with the death of Generalissimo Tito. Now Croatia and the Muslims have all become independent one way or another in Bosnia, particularly Kosovo, which was encouraged to be independent following the very bloody violation of the Dayton Accord that was brokered by Richard Holbrooke, a special envoy from the Clinton administration. So what do you think of the post-war reconstruction in that country, Serbia?
Well, I will say Yugoslavia is a case study in the dangers of artificial nations, just like Iraq. It was a combination of South Slavic peoples that was created as a result of the First World War that only had in common where they were geographically in the world. And Tito
Belgium is another case.
Yes, exactly.
Belgium still
but I mean, Tito held it together with an iron fist, and after he left, it splittered back along religious lines, which is where it was before the war. I mean, I think that it's it was a warning that was not heeded by Europe, by NATO, by the United States when it started intervening in the Middle East, which is that strong men kept security in their countries, often through harsh means, but once they were gone, it leaves a vacuum, and you have to be very careful.
I do think there are always some people, either in Russia or even some of the republics of the former Yugoslav Federation, who are very nostalgic about the old days of either Stalin or Tito. Because in those days, it seems people were able to enjoy free education, free Medicare, free food, even a lot of subsidies from the central government. Today, of course, except for demonstrations in the days of Tito in Yugoslavia, that was not allowed. Neither was it allowed in Moscow, of course, or in other member states of the Warsaw Pact. But why do you think that there's been such a kind of nostalgia?
Well, it's like the UK want to leave the European Union because they think about the Great Britain, the empire. This is because today the many countries live in difficulties, not so many bright future. European Union, the neighbor, they want to join European Union, but European Union consider Serbia as an original sin. They cannot accept. Even Turkey cannot accept it. So the question, I think, as you mentioned, highlights the cooperation with China. At the same time, I think in today's world, there's no strong leadership. There are more politicians, no statement. During that time, Tito, Stalin, there are statement. Even the people today, they gave a different evaluation. But during that time, the people still laughing. Clearly, during the Second World War, they need a hero. Today, we don't have such kind of hero who can guide us. So too much populists, too much nationalists. The world is very in a tumult.
But obviously, Vladimir Putin is widely regarded by particularly Russians as a strong man, a strong leader who is able to put together, the Russian people. And he's able to enjoy an approval rating of up to 80% for a long period of time, yes, despite the oil shock. Right. So what do you think of the relationship between Poland, Serbia, and Russia?
Okay, that's an interesting triangle because Serbia and Russia remain strong friends. There are close ties. Poland and Russia is a different situation. A lot of people in Poland view that period from the end of the Second World War until the fall of the Berlin Wall and the rise of solidarity as an occupation by the Russians, by the Russian Empire, and they don't want to have anything to do with it. They are very happy to be the western terminus of the Silk Road coming from China and be the gateway to Europe. But they really don't want to look at themselves as being dependent on Russia for their future. I mean, they're looking, whether it's looking to NATO or looking to China, they are looking for economic opportunity with China. They're looking for security from Russia, from NATO.
Dr. Wang, are you surprised that Poland was one of the first few former member states of the Warsaw Pact to apply for membership of NATO in the eastward expansion of this military bloc, which ironically somehow has lost its military functions upon the end of the Cold War? And why authorities in Warsaw decided to accept the missile shield program along with the Czech Republic, to the greatest dismay of Moscow a few years ago?
Well, firstly, it's a location. It's too close to Russia and Germany. So the reason the Second World War, when Adolf Hitler invaded Warsaw, that began of the Second World War in Europe.
Poland was sacrificed.
Yes, sacrificed first.
Stalinist regime and Nazi Germany, as well as perhaps the poor, bitter memories about the carting incident.
Yeah. So there is unsafety. They feel unsecure. People's feeling. So they worry about it, Russia. Russia is too strong, too big, and so they want to not to be the frontier when Russia expand and then attack Europe. So they need NATO, need the United States to protect them. And that reason they joined NATO first in 1999, and then 2004 joined European Union. During that time, Poland will be proud of the best student. The new members. That reason with the Ukraine, want to also catch up with this to join European Union and then make the crisis. But now Poland is feeling about European Union a little bit changed. The concept of the European Union cannot, serve too much for them. So we pragmatically to think about maybe China can help more in system. And in 2020, as a new members, they can get the financial support from European Union will be finished. So they urgently need a new cradle that's from China, that they also Poland to join the AIIB first, and also the only CEE country.
Rick, what do you think of the rise of the alleged left-leaning ideology and the leadership in Poland in recent months, and that seriously angered authorities in Brussels of the European Union, and they started the process of reassessing the membership of Poland because they were very uneasy about what has happened in Poland. And that's not something that comes alone. I mean, some of the Central European countries may have started reassessing their relationship with the old part of Europe, because one of the major reasons for the UK to hold a referendum about their future with the continental Europe is the issue of immigration. A lot of the immigrants from Central and Eastern European countries have been rejected because of the alleged outsourcing of the jobs in Western Europe. What do you think of the latest development there?
Well, there are really two pieces of that. One is the EU is going to have to accept that governments are elected by the people, and the central bureaucrats may not agree whether it's there, whether, let's say in France, if there would be a new government that would be a right-wing nationalist government, they're going to have to accept it. And the second part is nations across Central and Eastern Europe, the former Soviet bloc, are reassessing the future. I mean, they've seen what happened in the decade and a half where they were looking west. And a lot of them now see that they do not see that as their future for prosperity. They're leaving their options open right now. I think there will be a lot of embrace of AIIB because they see it as a potential plus for them at a time of real uncertainty in Western Europe and with the EU.
Poland has become the biggest trading partner of China in Central and Eastern Europe. Not only that, it is the only country in this region that has successfully accepted the shock therapy with the end of the Cold War. But the shock therapy, by the way, was a devastating disaster in Russia because of President Yeltsin, who followed the advice from the United States. What do you think of the differences between the experiment in Poland and that in Russia?
Well, I think Poland is lucky because it's a neighbor of Germany, and the Germans felt very guilty during the Second World War. So there's a lot of support to Poland. That's the reason separately they can succeed, but not in Russia. Russia, the dream, lots of money from the West to help them, but it's not the case.
Well, does shock therapy actually mean radical privatization of the SOE sector? If that's the case, what do you think of the alleged corruption that swept most segments of the Russian economy in the early days of the new Russia?
Well, I think that the corruption there, that gold rush at the time of shock therapy, really did it in long term. Part of the problem is cultural. I mean, there was no time in the life of anyone in the Soviet Union that they had any opportunity to run a streamlined, efficient business. And it was a shock in so many ways. People thought they could get rich quick if they had the right connections, but the infrastructure of the country was really horrible. Poland had a better situation to start with. The people of Poland had memories back before the Soviet days and before the Nazis, and were more able to rebuild from scratch. And I don't think you can overstate the cultural and the economic historical differences.
What do you think of the religious background? Because Pope John Paul II, the late Pope, came from Poland. Not only was he able to bring a peaceful end to the military regime and General Jaruzelski in the closing days of the Cold War there, but all of the reforms about the SOE would have to go through a painful period. Now the pains, that has a lot to do with your resilience and ability to survive. What do you think of the role of religion in assisting the unemployed? I mean, those guys who were made redundant because of the profound transformation of the OCE sector. How do you see the religious factor?
Very important question, yeah. John Paul, the Pope, is Polish, who helped a lot bring Poland into the West.
Thank you very much. With that, we come to the end of this edition of Dialogue. I'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye.